Hello, welcome to Pop Culture Maniacs podcast. Me, Kieran, and with me is Jean. It has been a long time since we actually recorded one of these, so welcome back. So, Jean, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Again, we are going to do our topic is hopefully topical. Is Netflix doomed? I have to give it a catchy title to make sure that we play the algorithm game. So if you're listening because of that, yeah. So yes, Netflix. They've the recent news is that they've lost 200,000 subscribers and their share price has been down by $50 billion. So are they doomed?
I mean, I think the short answer is probably not doomed.
Yeah.
I think the longer answer is there's going to have to be some sort of reckoning internally with Netflix. Yeah. And I think it's already started from what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
But they're in trouble.
Yeah, I think the thing with Netflix, it was always a house built on sand because they had building up debt for a very long time. That wasn't actually particularly profitable, and they was investing a lot in programming and filmmaking.
Yeah, and it's interesting to kind of look at how Netflix is positioned now in the streaming wars, and where 5 years ago they were really the only game in town, and now with the amount of money you said they spent on content, and they had this policy of we'll buy out every great content creator away from network TV, away from other studios, and give them this incredible deal where they can have the freedom to make whatever they want. So they did this. They threw all the money in the world at creating content. And now they ended up with an excess of content that was of varying degrees of good and bad. And I think their hit rate has gone down. I think that's essentially, to me, what the main problem with Netflix is their hit rate's gone down and the competition has gone up.
Yes.
And that's, I think that's the crux of what we're probably going to get at in the whole pod.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much a very similar attitude. Like the competition has really upped their game because obviously you've got Amazon have upped their game. Apple sort of we've got Prestige, and obviously HBO Max. Well, pretty much every. And I'm sending you on Twitter like the example of if someone subscribed to all the streaming services in the UK. It costs something like $2,500 a year.
And as somebody who subscribes to almost every major streaming service, it's expensive. Yeah. And I mean, personally, just looking at my, what I watch regularly, I turned on Netflix for the first time to watch one of their shows this past weekend for the first time in maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
For one of their originals. And I think that's another interesting facet of the streaming war situation is that Netflix built its house on sand, but that sand was full of a lot of non-original shows. Yes. That was the place where you got your Friends, you got The Office. And as these other streaming sites have popped up, they've pulled back their IP.
That was actually going to be a point I was going to raise because yes, as you say, everyone's pulled back their IP, and you've obviously got Disney pretty much own most of pop culture. Warner Brothers owns most of the rest, and then everyone else has the scraps. And obviously, like with Netflix, because obviously some of their big shows were the Marvel shows, and Disney have pulled those back. They had the international rights to Star Wars. Star Trek Discovery, and again they Viacom have brought, or Paramount, whoever owns them, has taken them back. Even the international rights. It's in the film Free Guy goes, it's all about the IP, baby.
And it is. That's what it's turned into. And it's interesting to me, from a TV perspective, which is kind of how I siphon all my streaming. Is when I look at the shows I watch, like on actual streaming platforms and aren't sent to me by studios to look at, it's mostly It's mostly stuff that's on, like a network TV show, like, this Abbott Elementary or Ghosts that's on CBS, or even, the Star Trek series or a Disney Plus series. I never hear the buzz about a Netflix show anymore. The last big Netflix show was back in September of last year with Squid Game.
Yeah.
And, like the Bridgerton second season was great, but, and I don't want to jump too many topics here, but, the interesting thing too, from a TV perspective, is Netflix now has to create almost from whole cloth original content. That's all they can do now. And their distribution model is now suddenly very different than every other streaming sites, because Apple and Disney and Hulu and Amazon, for the most part, are now releasing TV shows weekly again. So Netflix is dropping everything in a binge. And so they have less, I guess, social media and pop culture, cachet, because the show drops on a Friday. Everyone watches that weekend. They forget about it. They watch an episode of Ted Lasso on a Friday. They get another one next week and another one next week. And it drives people back to that streaming site in a way that Netflix isn't adapting to.
Yeah. I was going to say something similar, because I think the other issue of them with the old model of binge watching, put everything out in one go, is affect subscription. People could just say subscribe for the free trial, just binge watch everything, or as much as they can, then drop it. Whilst if you're forcing a more traditional weekly schedule, people have to stay tuned if there's a show they really like, or stay subscribed, shall I say.
Exactly. You find out Bridgerton season 2 is dropping, and you watch Bridgerton season 1 with your friend on their Netflix. You're like, all right, well, I'll get a subscription, watch it this weekend, watch everything else that's recommended to me. And then, I don't want to pay $14, $15 a month for this. And then you cancel it. But you fall in love with Ted Lasso. And I know several people who had this happen to them. They fell in love with it and are like, but where's the rest of it? Oh no, it's a weekly show. Oh no. Okay. Well, now I'm hooked for at least a couple months on this. And in that couple months, it's a time for me to look and see what else is there. And then, I fall in love with For All Mankind or this other show and this other show. And suddenly you're not canceling that subscription. And it creates creates the availability of you to spend more time digging through the library of that streaming service when you're not binging something. And I think that's a thing Netflix hasn't had to take into account until now, because everyone else was binging too. So you'd binge the show on Amazon, you binge the show on Hulu, you binge the show wherever you get it, and then you stop.
Yeah, and then it's just the long wait again for assuming it's good enough that for the next season.
And then the other thing too is, you binge the show, you stop, and then you have, a year, 18 months to wait. And Netflix is also notorious for not renewing things quickly.
Yeah.
If they renew them at all after the 2-season rule, which is a whole other thing we can get into later probably. But, people forget that they like this show because it's not coming out again. And, it's been 18 months. Oh gosh, I forgot that even existed. Oh, maybe I'll watch it. Maybe I won't. Maybe I don't care about the characters anymore. But when you have a 10-week commitment to a show, you start to get more focused on the characters. You care more about them. You have time to talk to people and figure out what's going to happen next. And you get Reddit subreddits all about like trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And you get invested in the show in a way you can't in a binge. And I think that's something Netflix is really going to have to take a deep look at. And I know they've said they don't want to, but if you want to drive subscribers, you need to give them a reason to stay.
Yeah.
And I think that's a thing they took for granted for the last decade.
Well, they revolutionized the model with the binge watching strategy, but then obviously they were for quite a long time the only game town, or pretty much one of the few. I think like Amazon and Hulu pretty much followed suit, but now that there much more competition, as you say, people bring up the buzz. It helps build up the buzz if there's more shows released weekly instead of one big lump.
Yeah, and also, speaking of their TV shows, Netflix hasn't won the Emmy yet for best drama. Like, they've never won that Emmy. And many other streaming sites have won, but Netflix hasn't, because they've never been able to get over that hump in a way. And that's also, I think, an interesting conundrum, is that they've got the quantity, but do they have the quality anymore to make people want to stick around?
Yeah, I think because when you have too much as well, it's hard to siphon through to find something. Something I think something like, as you say, Squid Game, that was a bit of a, well, I would say sleeper hit, but it wasn't. It was a massive hit, but it wasn't like straight away hit you. It took a bit of word of mouth to be big.
Yeah, they didn't promote it heavily. They didn't think it was going to be an international success, and so it shocked them when it was.
Sort of like this high volume approach. It sort of makes me think of something like Bloomhouse. They have a similar strategy with their filmmakers. They have give their filmmakers quite a lot of free reign. The thing is, they get paid low at the beginning, but the idea is people who are, because that's why their production costs are so low, but they obviously get a good back end deal, assuming their whatever film's successful. And obviously they have been successful, quite a lot of films, but then they've also made a lot of rubbish as well, stuff that people forgets even exists.
Yeah, and that's an interesting choice. And it also, it makes everyone invest more in the success of the film.
Yeah.
And so you want it to be good. It's not just, kind of throwaway model, which I appreciate.
Yeah. And I was going to say, from as a film fan perspective, and for quite a while, the Netflix film did have a bit of had a stigma against it. Like, you're thinking, well, like, obviously some of the big examples was Bright, which was meant to be their big ticket blockbuster. And yeah, that was not a good film. It was a pretty rubbish fancy police action buddy copy. My mind's blown up. A fantasy buddy cop mashup made from the director of Suicide Squad and the son, and Max Landis, who's only ever written one good film.
Yep.
And like, it was a big deal when they got Duncan Jones to make Mute. And again, well, I think some of the criticisms was a bit harsh on that film. It's not exactly the best film ever made either. It's a pretty standard sort of neo-noir mystery.
Yeah, and I know there was a lot of pushback in Hollywood after, when they started their kind of Oscar bait films every year.
Yeah,
they'd release them for like a weekend in a theater just to qualify. And so I know there was a lot of pushback. I don't know if there's so much pushback now that, after the pandemic, so many things were released, and it might have kind of gone away, but I know there's some stigma there that is probably still part of it, especially now that they've never managed to, again, win the Oscar for Best Picture, and Apple beat them to it. So
but they have it. No, didn't Roma win it one year? The one Alfonso Cuarón film.
I was nominated, but it didn't win Best Picture.
All right, okay. I should know this. That makes me look stupid. It's and also, I think with content creators, there has been a real it's been a gold rush for them. So like so many people have been making big ass deals since Netflix, and because obviously I think like Martin Scorsese is making his next film with Paramount and Apple. Phoebe Waller-Bridge has got a big deal with Amazon. It's pretty big. So yeah, if you're a big name content creator, cash in now before the collapse.
Oh yeah, Netflix backed up the money truck to Shonda Rhimes with great success, because Bridgerton has become a hit. And then, less success with, Ryan Murphy's, whatever it is Ryan Murphy's been doing over there.
Yeah. I think there's some people might say that the issue is they give some creators too much freedom. So they they can come up with ideas, have absolutely no, because creators do need, they don't just need yes men, they do need a producer to say, no, that's not right. There are cases of creators given too much freedom, they get.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I was trying to think of how to articulate my point.
Oh no. Yeah, I mean, if you give them a blank check and essentially give them complete creative freedom, there's no guarantee they're going to be able to corral their ideas into something that's even filmable, let alone something that'll be a success.
Yeah.
And, we've seen that with some of these deals that have kind of languished where, you get the deal and then it starts to slowly fall apart. Nothing gets made. I mean, I think the biggest one would be, Benioff and Weiss over at HBO, where they, they had a freedom to do whatever they wanted. They picked a horrible idea and it fell apart rightfully. And now they've kind of disappeared.
Admittedly, to be honest, since I like history and alternative history, I would have been interested actually in that idea, but I can understand.
I would have been interested. Yeah, I would have been interested in that idea if it came from a Black filmmaker and not from these two white guys who haven't had the best track record with people of color in their works that they've worked on.
I was gonna say with them, because they did have a deal with Netflix, because they were going to adapt the Wandering Earth, the series of Chinese sci-fi novels, and there's been nothing about that for a long while.
Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting to look at, Netflix's bets have been on content creators, more so than content itself. Whereas, some of the other streaming services, they're focusing more on the content itself. Amazon has its big, Lord of the Rings show finally allegedly coming out this year. And, some of the other, HBO is deep into the Game of Thrones universe and they're putting all their money in that. But Netflix really hasn't sat down and, at least in a huge way, said, this is going to be our big story. And they've pulled some big IP over time, but they've canceled it, or it hasn't turned out well, or it's fallen apart. Whereas the other streamers seem to be able to get the big IP and hopefully turn it into something. I mean, HBO presumably has done much better because they have the track record, but.
Yeah. I was going to say as well, I thought after their experience with Star Trek and stuff and the Marvel shows, Netflix might be a bit hesitant for bringing in these IPs if they could just pay a good sum for production and it get pulled away from them.
I mean, the key for them, and I think this is going to be their model moving forward if it isn't already, is they're going to have to, pull an Apple. Apple's entire library is all original content. There's not a single thing that's not an Apple product or an Apple show. And Netflix is going to have to start not just paying for content creators, but paying for content, paying for, a book or, something that's not owned by Disney.
So because I know at the moment, I think some of their big projects they're coming up with is they're going to do the BioShock film based on the video game.
There you go.
And they're making a Sonic the Hedgehog animated series.
Because we need that.
Yeah. Hey, Sonic's awesome.
Sonic's awesome, but we've had a lot of Sonic lately.
Yes. I even wrote a whole pitch on what I would do if I got to make the Sonic the Hedgehog series, because I'm a bit which probably going to make people question my mental state.
I think it's interesting that, I guess video games are kind of the last frontier that aren't wholly owned by a major conglomeration that's already in the entertainment, like the film and television. So that'll be an interesting battle to see who gets what.
Well, I was hoping to do this for another podcast, but as you're going to say with video games, a lot of the companies that own the properties are now getting involved in the film production themselves anyway. So Sega obviously have a big say on the Sonic film. You obviously got Ubisoft had a big say on the Assassin's Creed film. So
that was a movie.
And when the Halo movie was being in production, Microsoft were heavily involved in that production.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, and I suspect, I mean, that's probably the best partnership somebody like Netflix at this stage can hope for, because I don't think, maybe Microsoft, but I don't think any of these companies have designs large enough to create their own streaming services.
Well, there have been attempts. Like, I think Sony with PlayStation, they did release a superhero show, but I think
I remember that. Yeah, that was not
with Shia Copley, the District 9 bloke.
Mm-hmm.
And Xbox was partnering, or Microsoft with it through Xbox were partnering to make Humans, obviously the excellent sci-fi series, but they pulled out, so AMC stepped in to handle the internet. So it was a joint production between Channel 4 in the UK and AMC in the US.
I still think kindly on that show. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, because but there is so much to discuss. I think, which we say with think like with Netflix as well. They had a disparaging term dumped to Netflix. Because they did have so many not very good films being put on, or just they brought so many films. I think like the joke with because if you remember Holmes and Watson, the that I think that Sony did try to sell that to Netflix, and went the film's so bad even Netflix wouldn't buy it.
I mean, it was really bad.
Yeah. So well, I think since we're talking about their costs of how much they're spending, like, isn't the reports on the final season of Stranger Things that they're spending 30 million per episode?
Well, yeah, and I know the cast all got major raises, so I suspect a lot of that is also paying for everybody. But that's insane. That's an insane amount of money to spend on a show people are going to watch regardless. Like, it's not a show that's hurting for viewers. It's doing just fine. And it's crazy to me.
Yeah. I think one of the big problems for Netflix, though, is it's the lack of diversity of their business, because obviously Amazon, big online retailer, Apple, big electronics company, Disney, as I've already mentioned, and a entertainment juggernaut, and HBO, big experienced players of high-end television. So it's what Netflix, besides from streaming, all they've got is the DVD mailing service, and that's just in the US, and obviously I don't think it's nowhere near as big as it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. They've put all their eggs in the streaming basket, and it was the right move, but they didn't bother to think about a future where they weren't going to be the top dog.
Yeah. And I think it was, well, the other issue is they are the most expensive service. I mean, aren't they like $17.99 a month now?
I think it's still like 15 something for at least the plan I have. I think my plan I have is 15, and it has like 5 accounts and 2 people can stream at a time. But it's significantly more expensive, and I understand that from a library perspective, because it does still to this day have the largest streaming library of all of them.
Yeah.
But when you're paying $4 or $5 for Apple, but you're getting significantly better quality programming, it starts to become a thing where people are like, well, do I really need Netflix? Yeah, I was saying that, like, it's cost the most, but it has the largest library of stuff. But, when you're looking at, you can get, a Hulu with no commercials plus an Apple and an Amazon for just like a couple bucks more than you get a Netflix. Well, then you add them all together. That's where all the buzzy shows are right now, is on a Hulu or an Apple, particularly an Apple. And, or you get a Disney Plus and you throw that in there, and suddenly, for $5 more than one subscription to Netflix, you have 4 streaming services with the bulk of the content people are talking about today.
Yeah. And there's obviously, I think with Netflix, they've been shooting themselves in the foot because they've been saying first that they're going to be cracking down on password sharing. So, which has obviously gone down like a lead balloon.
Yep.
And they're thinking of making plans with commercials. And again, whole point, one of the reasons why people subscribe and pay this much for streaming services is because they don't want to watch commercials during their TV shows.
Exactly. Yeah, I have Paramount Plus, and I have a couple people who occasionally use their own profiles on it. And one of them, basically messaged me and said, I will pay you an extra $10 if you get the commercial free version of Paramount. I'm tired of watching commercials. I'm like, all right, done. I'll do it.
Yeah, it's just because I think as in the UK, we do have some streaming services which are paid through advertising. Well, when I say I should say that. Like Channel 4. Sorry, you obviously got Channel 4 and ITV and Channel 5, all streaming services, which they're free as long as you just have to watch the adverts. I think people will not accept paying a high amount and watch adverts.
Yeah, and Netflix is talking about creating a move to a lower price point that allows for commercials. And I honestly, I don't think that's going to be as big of a draw as I think it is.
Yeah.
Because people have gotten used to having the product without the commercials. So why would they want commercials?
It's a bit of a mess for them. I think as well, with them, it's the pandemic was a big boost for them. And obviously now that we're coming out of it, people, plus since recent events has led to a cost of living crisis, I think a lot of households are thinking, do we really need this or that?
Yeah, exactly. And if you're in a crunch, like I said, you're going to want the most bang for your buck, and the most bang for your buck might be getting 4 other services for the price of 1.
Yeah.
And so they need to come up with a way for people to want to get the Netflix account. And as of right now, they don't really have that.
Yeah. There is also one argument I've seen online of a certain social media overlord said, I'm going to say this in the most dismissing voice possible, is it a case of go broke?
Yeah, that's definitely not the problem with that.
Yeah, I don't, to be honest, I haven't even noticed. The only other thing I remember is them controversy when they release cuties. But then again, I was going to say, I think that's a case of people just and of a feedback loop, and people just the controversy just building without anyone actually watching the film.
Yeah, and if you're going to look at the more progressive streaming services, Netflix isn't even on that list. The shows coming out of an Amazon, or particularly an Apple or Hulu, are much more progressive in that sense, and are much more willing to take risks and try things. Whereas Netflix on the whole is a much more conservative based content programming, and the things that, are a little out there or have pushes in different ways tend to end up canceled.
Yeah. I can't even really think of, the only reason I could think of is that maybe some certain content creators have obviously have a certain political leaning, but then I think some people, I got a feeling Netflix might be looking for a way to reduce their contracts or get out their contracts, maybe with certain exiled prince and his wife.
Yeah, particularly when their big hit is going to be talking about them.
Oh yeah, that's what the world really needs.
Hey, the final 2 seasons coming out.
Oh, sorry. Oh, Oh, Crown, that's fine.
No, the Crown, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be fine. I was thinking it's a show actually about Harry and Meghan.
No, the final two seasons.
Who the hell would watch
seasons
that?
are going to be about them. So, well, not necessarily Meghan, but definitely about Harry and William and Kate and all that. So,
yeah. So, but yeah, I can't, because they like paid a ridiculous amount by Netflix as well.
Oh yeah, like everybody was.
Yeah. Netflix, if you want to pay me a lot, I'm perfectly willing to talk. I'm going to treat it like prostitution, though. Pay me up front.
I agree. That's the way to do it.
Yeah. That's our tip for the day for everyone. Be like a prostitute, get paid up front.
You got to do it. Otherwise, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Do you think this is also the start? Because I think this has been something I've been thinking of. I think even been writing about for a while. Is the potential for a streaming crunch? Do you think we're might be on the start of it?
I think so. I mean, I always assumed it would be, smaller streaming services merging together, or, just cutting off completely.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect Netflix to be the first domino to start wobbling.
Yeah. I think because the best examples I could think of is like in the 80s, there was the video game crash when there was such a flood of shuffleware. It basically basically sort of tarnished the video game industry, and obviously one of the first big players, Atari, is now not even don't even exist anymore. Plus, you had like the 90s comic book crash, which it did even lead to Marvel going bankrupt, and hence why they sold the film rights to a lot of their popular characters, and of course, probably the .com crash under like of the early noughties.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten to the point where, like we said earlier, you're spending exorbitant amounts of money just to have a subscription to each of these services. And if you're somebody who still has cable as well, like here in the States, it's insane. It's an insane amount of money to spend just so you can have the content. And I think that's really what it's going to boil down to, is people aren't going to want to keep paying out the nose for content they don't necessarily want. And I think what we're going to end up with, and we predict this all the time and it never happens, but I think we're going to end up with is the streaming services are either going to go more niche, and you're going to want what's going to give you the content you want. Do you want all the Marvel and Disney stuff? Well, then you're going to get Disney Plus. Do you want Apple's more kind of unique multinational take on things, or you're going to want that? And so you're going to have to get an identity as a streaming service to cater to people. And what Netflix has right now is just kind of a hodgepodge. They don't have that identity. And I think that's what's going to define the streaming services moving forward.
Yeah. I think the other option is there's even more centralization, because I think with other industries, there is that, other parts of the entertainment industry, there is that sense of centralization. If you say, or iTunes sort of pretty much revolutionized music industry, and so did Spotify, and they generally have most of the music you would want whether you want to buy it or stream it. Plus, in the video game industry, particularly for PC gamers, you've got Steam, which you can get most, which sort of basically monopolized how you buy your video games now, or PC games. And obviously, if you buy on digital games on PlayStation or Xbox or Nintendo, there are 3 of them. Again, you're pretty much buying it straight from their services anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And obviously, I think the other thing is this large amount of streaming services has ended up having backfired, because piracy is now back on the rise. Because when it was just a few major players, piracy became a lot less attractive option because there was no need for it.
Yeah, especially when there was, widespread password sharing. Your friend just give you the access to the thing, and You need to go on Pirate Bay or wherever and steal it.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's, I would say with Netflix, I'd go back to our original question is it doomed? I don't think it will be doomed. I think it, as you say, there's going to have to be changes though. They're going to have to be, there's going to have to be some sort of realignment within the streaming industry, because it is unsustainable with it being so many around.
They've got to fix their model or else they are doomed.
Yeah. Okay then. So I think on that point, we say thank you to our listeners. You've been great. Obviously, if you liked what you heard, please share, like us, share us, subscribe, leave comments, tell us how great we are. We love to hear that. If you've got negative opinion, keep it to yourself. Nah, never. I'm joking. But thank you. Cheers. Bye.